Hi, I want to welcome everybody. I'm Lisa Ackerman. I'm the Executive Vice President here at World Monuments Fund. And as I say nearly every time we have one of these lectures, one of the greatest triumphs of moving here to the Empire State Building 2 years ago was that we had this magnificent conference room design that we could, in very quick order, turn into a lecture space. And we've been enjoying it ever since. And because we're always trying to improve, we actually now have a brochure for the first time about tonight's lecture. And so that people can have a little taste of what the lecture is about to take away with them and remind them, hopefully, of a very engaging evening. And it's a special pleasure to have a lecture tonight on Trophime, because Trophime has been part of WMF's life for many years. In the late 80s and early 90s, with the support of the Samuel H. Crest Foundation and the Florence Gould Foundation, World Monuments Fund entered into a project to do some research and help design a conservation program for the facade of Trophime. And several years ago, the city of Arles contacted World Monuments Fund and invited the organization to be part of a program to develop a conservation plan for the Cloister. And this was really a wonderful opportunity, not only to re-meet old friends and be involved in such a magnificent building in Arles once again, but also to really think about what it would take to do a meaningful project at Trophime. And I think what you'll hear tonight is that conservation, which we all think of as the physical improvement of the site, actually involves often years of research. And in this case, one of the enriching parts of this project has been all of the documentation that has been produced, from archival research to new archaeological research in the Cloister, to very intensive scientific investigation of the composition of the stones and what's happened to them over time. And I'm very happy to have with us tonight Glenn Boornazian, who worked for WMF both on the facade project and in the Cloister project. And he's really been the guiding force for World Monuments Fund in designing this current phase of work. And he's going to talk tonight briefly to give people an overview of the kinds of activities that have gone on. And one of the things that comes out of projects like this is, of course, years and years of potential scientific research. And it's an opportunity to share with the field the lessons we learn from each of these projects. And the Association of Preservation Technology is such a enterprise for the preservation field. And we were very happy at last year's APT conference that Glenn and his colleagues could present on some of the work at Trophime. Also with us tonight is Didier Happe, who's going to talk about what happens when you collect all of this massive amount of scientific information and visual information, and how can you knit that together in a meaningful way to talk about what we do in a way that's engaging to the public and hopefully instructive as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Glenn.
Thank you. Well, good evening. It's an honor to be here, and I can't quite believe you're talking about Trophime when it started. I guess in when I started working on it in 1988 or 89, and I can't quite believe how many years have gone by. It's just sitting here 20 some odd years later. But it's been one of the most exciting projects for me, and I think one of the things Lisa is alluding to is that for a project this important and that has this much historical and artistic importance to it, the amount of research and testing and design and development that goes into it is really staggering. The importance and therefore the risk that's involved are so large, and understanding every aspect about it before we actually start doing work is really all that it's about. So with that, I just thought I would, what I was just going to try to do here tonight is just sort of give you an idea about the different aspects of the project that the World Monuments Fund has supported over this period in time, the last 5 or 6 years in the Cloister, and to then sort of explain how some of that is being used by the city of Arles and how Didier has picked up on that and is using it for his work as well. And with what he's doing, I find some of what he's doing with the use of laser point clouds not only sort of standard in the field, but some of what he's doing is extremely exciting and unique. So this will all sort of hold together as we go through the amount of time and the amount of work that's been done. So in any case, to orient everyone, Arles is in Provence in southern France, and I'm going to zoom in right on Trophime, and here is the main square. This pointer doesn't work so well. Here's the main square with the obelisk. Here's the church itself. This is the front facade is here. The church is in this space, and here's the cloister here. And what's extremely interesting is how close we are to the Roman Forum and the Colosseum, and the roles that all the Roman materials sort of play in the development, not of just Arles, but Trophime specifically. So zooming into the cloister and giving you an easier way of seeing the complex. Some of our historic research turned up a tremendous amount of information, and I'll talk a little bit about that as we go through, but etchings over time give you sort of scenes, or gave us scenes of the cloisters throughout time and how it was used, sometimes in very lively fashion with people walking through it, or in cases like this where it looks a bit overgrown and lonely. And today, a view of the cloister of the general looking north at the tower of the church and the east gallery. I think also what's extremely exciting about Trophime for art historians is that, and you'll see this in one of Didier's sort of movies, is the chronological development of the site, and the fact that the north and the east galleries were built first and during the Romanesque period. So the iconography and the statuary is all from the Romanesque period, and then the south and the west galleries were built during the Gothic time. So architecturally, it also shows the development of different techniques and designs. So as Lisa was saying, I guess in the late 80s, mid 80s, WMF got involved on the front facade, and Bonnie asked me to sort of help from a technical point of view evaluate what the soiling was and some of the techniques that the French government laboratory at Monument Historique was coming up with. And we got involved just sort of working with the architect en chef and the technical team, sort of evaluating potential methods and materials. And that project went ahead and was completed, I think, in the early 90s. And WMF at that point decided to move into the cloister and focus our technical expertise there while this continued to proceed. So today, the World Monuments Fund has not only provided financial support, as Lisa was saying, to the project, but as being the person who's sort of spearheading the work there for them, which is an incredible honor, they're also providing a lot of technical expertise. So the architect and chef today is this man here, Francois Boton, and Francois is looking for looking for what's on the cutting edge, not just working with the technical abilities of the people in that area, but trying to understand exactly what's happening on these column capitals and statuary, understand why it happened, what the threats are, and then to be able to reach out internationally and see what's happening out there, who's out there, what are they doing, and how can we apply it here in the cloister itself. So as part of the scientific committee that WMF has supported, and there's been three major members of that, myself, George Wheeler from the Metropolitan Museum and Columbia University, and Stefan Simon. Stefan and George primarily focus on marble as a material and developing sort of structural consolidation treatments and methods for that, which is an extremely important part of this project, and I'll show you a little bit about it. But then from time to time, when there are other areas of expertise that are necessary, WMF has also supported bringing some of those people to the site as well. In this case, you can see Norman Weiss, who's not only here digitally but also physically in the in the room, is a conservation scientist and who knows a lot about the implementation of conservation programs. So bringing that sort of practical application to the project was also extremely important. In the mid-1980s, we also had the great honor of working with Whitney Stoddard, an art historian from Williams College. And Whitney wrote the book basically on Gothic architecture in southern France. And I think he had a Fulbright scholarship in the mid-30s, no, what am I talking about, in the mid-50s to, or late 50s to, well, 1954, to spend a lot of time in Arles. And one of the things that he did was he used his 4x5 camera and he documented every column capital and every sculpture in the Cloister. And what that enabled us to do, or one of the things it enabled us to do, was to sort of compare those images. So here in the 1954 image and here in the 1992, you can see the decay in certain locations that was accelerating. And this was happening throughout the site. And this acceleration is what sort of made the city of Arles very nervous, what made them reach out and really became the major challenge for us. And although the project, and I'll show you a few slides of that, is being implemented right now, as this gypsum crust that's here now that caused some of these problems is being removed, it raises more challenges. So it's a constant sort of experiment, but with some of the best people putting their brains together and trying to figure this out. So just a few more slides of these 1954 and 92 slides. And then obviously we have the last 5 years to look at. Here, you don't see so much, but what you do see are these little pinholes. And what that is indicating is that moisture is getting in there somehow and migrating its way through. It's going through freeze-thaw cycles or salt crystallization cycles and popping the crust off. And when it pops the crust off, it pops decorative carved materials with it. So this is a very serious problem. WMF also supported some archaeological work that was associated primarily with understanding the chronological development of the site. And that's another aspect of work that Didier incorporated into his film. One of the more exciting things for me was that some of the people who were doing laser cleaning in Arles, this is sort of we're hoping it's a non-destructive technique, and it can be non-destructive if used properly. Some of them, the tests that were done by people in the city of Arles were not uniform. And we felt that there were people out there in the world who were doing this in a way that was much more cutting edge. And we found this group in Greece that had designed and built a laser cleaning device that mixed both UV and IR together, which is really the first of its kind. And they were using it on the Parthenon. And when we start to speak to these people about the conditions that we have at Trophime, we felt confident that their work there, if we could somehow get them to come, their work there could help establish some sort of guidelines for the specifications that would be written for the work as it takes place now. So Vivi Pooley and her team came, and she's a physicist, and her team of engineers worked in representative locations guided by our team to help understand what laser cleaning could do and how far or how delicate we could be with it. So on the left you can see the before, and on the right the after, and just focus on this belt. What we're trying to do here is 2 levels of cleaning. In this particular case, we're trying to leave this ochre layer that we had found in our studies intact and uniform, which is not easy to do. So here you can see it close up. And what we also tried to do was find a similar situation and try to see if we could break through that ochre layer and actually have uniformity as well, which we were capable of doing. So it was this sort of an approach that helped us not only understand what we were dealing with, but also helped us understand that if we had the right equipment, these were both possible. And before that, that just was not the case. So today, a particular laser or a company that is using lasers that can match the quality that was established by Vivi are in place and are working as we speak, or it's nighttime there now, tomorrow. and this is the first go around, and you can see the whole team decided that they would leave the ochre layer and would see what everything looks like and what the conditions are underneath, and then only after that was done would the team decide if they would take the next step or not. And we're constantly in communication. People are constantly running tests to be prepared for anything that might happen. And what you're seeing here are areas where there were some sections of disaggregation, the loss of binder strength and therefore loss of material, where the Japanese tissue paper is. And where the black is left, there are some signs that there's some polychromy there. So some paint, which might be original. So samples of that are being taken and documented as well. And if you start to look at this carefully, you can start to see the level of crispness in this carving that is still there and was being lost in some areas, which I'll be showing you. But it's sort of that threat to the site that brought on this whole program. Another aspect of our work was to do laser scanning, and we did laser scanning specifically.
Limestone or marble?
Both, but these statues are marble, and the inner sort of courtyard spaces are all French limestone. So the laser scan we did was specifically working with a company by the name of SciArc, was specifically to get information about the cloister so that we could have elevations and plans to use in our for the architect and for ourselves. As a result, we were able to get point clouds of the whole downtown area, and they're quite amazing, as you can see, and extremely useful for other people at other times, and maybe for the World Monuments Fund as they start to think about how they can populate their website and share this information. This is the cloister in its almost finished form, and as people who know what they're doing start to work these laser clouds down and down and down to the more specific information that makes them useful, that slide I just showed you turns into an image like this. What we did was we took that laser cloud and applied high resolution images, as you can see here, and could create, this is something happened in the translation of the slide, but used it to create AutoCAD elevations and plans, basically architectural drawings that are to scale to within a few millimeters, I suppose, if done correctly. Give me a sec. Another aspect of the work that the World Monuments Fund supported was the hiring of an archivist that did research in the archives in both Arles and in Paris. And that turned over, as I was saying before, just tremendous images and written information. And that all was brought together to help the whole team understand what changes happened over time and how those changes relate to what we're seeing. And one of the most interesting finds was a paper that was documenting what Monument Historique did there in the 1850s or 60s under the guidance of Viollet-le-Duc. And there was a major intervention that removed some columns and put new ones there, pointed sections, put gutters in to control water runoff. But more from our point of view, or from the technical point of view, one of the most important pieces of information there, it stated that the use of something called potassium silicate or water glass was used and applied to the marble, basically a consolidant of its time. And it helped us understand what we were seeing in the scientific analysis data, how that was showing itself in certain aspects of the study. So also all of this extremely important information that really helped define and secure the method of approach to this project. Another aspect of this is the testing that went on, some of which Norman, my company, and George Wheeler worked on, the testing that went on to try to come up with methods and materials for consolidating the marble that was disaggregating. So therefore that marble that was lost its binder strength and was, as it was being washed away, we were losing carving detail. There are chemical treatments out there that can actually mechanically bind those grains together and leave the stone in such a state that it's breathable. It allows moisture to pass through. I'm not a big believer in doing anything like this without doing every bit of testing to ensure that it's actually doing what it says it does. We've done that numerous times in my office, and what people say their products do and what they actually do are two different things. So what George did here was tested the most cutting edge products that are out there on the market that we felt as a team could be potentially useful, and tested them on samples of stone that we had from Trophime and from the Roman Forum, to come up with and in the end came up with a process. It was not easy. There was a lot of failures along the way, but George and our team felt comfortable that in specific locations that showed the worst amount of decay, that a particular approach would be used. And therefore the World Monuments Fund team put that together and also designed the methods and materials that would be used to prepare that marble for such a treatment. We also documented all of the capitals in the statuary with high-resolution images, and then did perspective correction of those images. There are people sitting here who lived there for months doing this. And here's David Fleury, who is also virtually and really here with us. And David went through with Christy, who's also here, and photographed all of these, but then as he's doing, did perspective correction, and then made sheets of them. So each one was organized in very specific ways, in very systematic ways, so that we all knew when we were talking about particular column capital which one it was, which face it was, which way it was facing. Another aspect of WMF's support was also to hire Olivier Roland, a French architectural conservator whose expertise is really the documentation of existing conditions, and we worked with him to determine what conditions should be annotated so that we would understand what the priorities were and what treatments could be used where. And Olivier, you see here Olivier's annotations on our photographic backgrounds. And finally, WMF supported with our help and a computer programming company the development of a user-friendly interface into a GIS software. GIS, Global Information Services or Systems, is an extremely powerful tool, which is sort of, I think of it as a graphic database that can pull together almost any information that you can put into it and query it and help you start to understand the priorities at a particular site. And it's an extremely difficult program to understand how to work, but we're working with this group to try to come up with a user-friendly way of gaining that power on the site. So that this is just a portion of that program. All of the information that I've just talked about has been populated into this, including the conditions, and something as detailed as running a query that says, show me the column capitals that show this sort of decay that are this petrographic or this mineralogy can be done, and you'll get information like this popping up that tells you where it is, and historical information can be done the same way, treatment information the same way. So an extremely powerful tool. When you think of all of this data that sort of comes together as a project is being designed and to feel like that information is not only applicable during the work that's being done, but also in the future it can be accessed and used for many purposes, both maintenance at the site or for a group like the City of Arles or the World Monuments Fund to put on their websites. So with that, I probably went a little bit too long.
That's perfectly fine.
Okay.
While Didier gets his presentation up, I
can
just
do it.
wanted to say, oh, great, thank you, a couple of things. One is, I mentioned that when we were involved in the project in the late 1980s and the early 1990s, we were fortunate to have two longstanding donors help in that instance. And in this current phase, we've been even more fortunate, both that the Florence Gould Foundation and the Crest Foundation helped again, as did the Robert W. Wilson Challenge to Conserve Our Heritage, the Butler Fund for the Environment, the Ellsworth Kelly Foundation, and several other donors. So this has been a project that has captured a lot of people's imagination. I wanted to say that one thing Glenn somewhat pointed out but didn't fully articulate, that one of the reasons for all of the archival information was not just to understand how the site had changed over time in terms of the conditions of the capitals, which was our main focus, but actually the issue of how the cloister actually had been landscaped, if you will, over time was very important, because it's very romantic to see it filled with trees. But trees and all of that plant life means that there's a lot of water in the middle of the cloister, and that was causing quite a bit of damage. So it was extraordinarily useful to look at all of the 19th and early 20th century photographs and engravings and drawings and discover that most often there was not any vegetation in there, and that was really a very modern occurrence. And so one of the hottest debates really was, do the trees get to stay or do they go? Because they are obviously causing some measure of harm. So a lot of the archival research and the subsequent archaeological research also had to deal with physically what had the soil levels been, whether there had been pavement there or not, and to what extent we could protect the site from water infiltration and have any measure of vegetation there. So while our focus was the columns and the capitals and their conservation, it actually involved a great deal of other kinds of research, because what we're really aiming for here is a sustainable solution for the City of Arles. So no conservation program is going to be worth much if 10 years out the city is struggling once again with the protection of the monument. So I just wanted to add that in, and now I've talked long enough that Didier can come up and give his presentation.
Thank you so much. It's a real honor to be here tonight. Thank you very much for inviting me. I do apologize for my English. I'm French, so so it's not easy. When I met Glenn, it was about 2.5 years ago in Arles. We spent quite a long time, talking about how to use digital application, digital technologies, in order to join two goals. The first one is how to present to the public, to the experts, to the technicians, but also to the general public, all the documentation that has been gathered during the whole years. We're talking about 10,000 documents, audio, pictures, reports, restoration stuff, all kind of different and various documents that are in cupboards and they are not used by anyone, and how to show them, how to put them in place in relation with the cloister. And the second thing was to, as the cloister is quite precious, quite old, how can we get all the information, dimensional information about the cloister in one type, in order to use this information then in different goals, for making a database, for example, but also for making movies or applications for the presentation to the public. So this is what we discussed, and then we decided to make a project supported by the City of Arles and by the WMF, based on what Glenn told you before, mostly the PointCloud and the laser scanning of the cloister. So just a very short presentation. I'm running a company specialized in 3D documentation, so we do laser scanning. Basically, we are stone cutters. in 19 years ago when we created the company, it was created by stonecutters. So we know about architecture, and then we learned about the measure and about the presentation of 3D stuff to the general public. We are one of the leading company in France. We are a small company, but it's very highly specialized in this kind of activity, and with more than 900, maybe 1,000 references now. References means building or museum on which we've worked, doing 2D or 3D. Those sites are Notre Dame of Paris, are the Coliseum in Arles, Mont Saint-Michel, and some of the Louvre, Versailles Palace, and others. And we are also working in the world abroad. For example, in Afghanistan, we just come back from Somalia to make the 3D scanning of shelter caves, and this kind of things. So this is. We've worked, the third photo is San Anastasia in Albania, which is a site that was funded also by the WMF. You know, in life we have crossed quite a lot of time the WMF, directly or not directly. So, and that's why also it's a great pleasure, you know, we were talking about that earlier on, and in Yugoslavia, in Croatia, we've worked together for stone cutting. So what we do, we're not a technological company. We are more focused on the importance of the content, the scientific work that is done. We use them, and then we try to find the best digital application in order to show that to the public. Just when we talk about digital, when we talk about PointCloud, I just wanted to make very, very briefly not an history, but a process description of what it means. So first of all, when we talk about PointCloud, it's made out of a laser. So maybe if all of you are specialists, I will go very fast. But so there are different kind of lasers. There are different kind of method of acquisitions. There are not only lasers, there are also photogrammetry, which means using photos to make 3D point cloud. And we're also using drone acquisition now, which is a very new technique, but very powerful, because very quick. And able to make a point cloud or photos of a very large site in a very short period of time. Same thing, we do that for heritage, but we also do that for pieces of art, for museums, where we digitalize with also the same kind of techniques, very small or bigger pieces of art. We're also using videogrammetry. So it means that the technology is evolving very, very quickly, and but on the same goal to have the most precise or the quickest acquisition. When you go to a museum, you have to be very quick. Then there is a process that those kind of companies do have to transform the acquisition, the point cloud, into something that can be seen or read or visualized. For example, here you have, it's not working. Doesn't work. No, it doesn't matter. You can make a traveling into the point cloud in order to see, for example, a cathedral, how it is. This point cloud, as it was done by SciArc for the WMF, then is transformed into a 3D mockup, a 3D model, that then can be used for various applications. Technical application, for example, on this mockup of the Cloister, if you click on this Capitol, here it's not online, so you can't do it, then you will have all the information about this specific Capitol in 3D. The Capitol is in 3D, and you have all the related information, which is about the same use that the software, the technical software that was presented by Glenn before. And these mock-up can be used also for other means, such as where the networks are, where the electricity is, or to make the scenography, for example, and the acoustic scenography of the Opera of Paris. We'll also make numeric model in order to make copies, in order to make, when you have separate parts of a sculpture, for example, if you want to make them together, then you can do it in 3D, and then to make a mold, for example, or to make a copy. You can make retro-engineering. You can try to find out what the polychromy was and test the hypothesis online. More specifically on Trophime, what we did this based on this 3D cloud, PointCloud. We did a reconstitution of the history of the Cloister, based again on the work of the scientific group. We managed to make movies and make images of the construction of the Cloister as it was before. This 3D model can be used then for different applications. I hope it will work, this one. It has to. If it's okay. So normally I kill myself now. It was before.
It did. I saw it. No.
I don't even know where it is. You know everything now. Old style. So this is the movie. You saw the PointCloud with those nice colors. You saw the 3D model, golden, and here you will see the movie that was done out of it. So the same model, 3 different outcome, hopefully. Normally there is a sound. There is a...
So you don't have to kill yourself.
Yeah, good news.
Le plus prestigieux de l'époque médiévale. Fleuron de l'art roman provençal, l'église Saint-Trophime et son cloître sont classés monuments historiques dès le XIXe siècle et inscrits en 1981 sur la liste du patrimoine mondial de l'humanité. La communauté chrétienne d'Arles est l'une des premières de la Gaule, puisque dès le IIIe siècle, y siège un évêque. À la fin de l'Antiquité, une cathédrale de très vaste dimension est construite dans le quartier de l'Auture.
So, same model, PointCloud, 3D model, and the movie. It's the same basics. More as a perspective now, we can also do with this kind of 3D models, so it will not work, but I will make it work. Other things, augmented reality, for example, on mobile, on applications that you can download on your smartphone. And so these are 2 other projects that we did, and projects that we could do on Trophime. For example, to go through the scaffolding. There are some restoration work now, so the tourists are very frustrated. It works. So this is another project that we did in an abbey that was funded by the WMF a long time ago, for a long time. And we did an application of augmented reality that you can rent on site and you can download free of charge on your iPad, for example, on your tablet. Same thing, you have to acquire something, the dimension of the site. The idea was to, Jumièges was the nicest ruin of France, said Victor Hugo. And this is the actual site. And this is the site as it was before in the 11th century and in the 13th century. So when you are on site, you can see the superposition of the computer-generated image with the reality in augmented reality. And you have some audio and videos, cultural content. And so this is really adapted for sites that cannot be seen totally. Later on, I have my iPad here if you want to try it, because you can try it even if you're not on the site. You're welcome for that. So this is one of the projects. And the second project is the project we did for Le Louvre in Lens. You know, the Louvre opened a subsidiary in December in Lens. And there is the Time Gallery with 205 marvels, I would say, that were acquired in 3D, all of them. Some of them with laser arm, some of them with videogrammetry. This is videogrammetry. So or photogrammetry. So all the three different techniques. So it means that anybody now can make a 3D model of something if he knows how to do it. You have to know how to do it. You know, there is a specific way of taking the photos, but it's very easy as it compared to what it used to be before. Then there is some process, of course, of recombination. We did what we call a low poly, so it means a bit deteriorated 3D model to be able to show it on an iPad, and very high level of 3D for an application that is visible directly in the reserves of the. So this is the application that is available in the Louvre. And then you click on one of the piece of art and you have some information, as you see on the right hand side here. You see? And I don't think that this will work. No, it will not work. So these are the kind of application we can do digitally, based on the documentation we have, and based on the technological tools that we have now.
Thank you.
If you want to make some experiments, then you can.
Yes, so I was going to say, you know, WMF struggles year in and year out to figure out how to convey the information about projects, and technology obviously is helping us answer that question. And to that end, we've tried to put a lot of information on our website. So the website has project descriptions for 350 past projects, as well as our current 50 or 60 projects, and all of the sites that have ever been on the World Monuments Watch since 1996 are on the site, with descriptions and photographs and updates, if we know them, about what's happened to the site since it was on the watch. And we've created a number of videos and slideshows. But what we're hoping is, as we finish up some of our current projects and head to our 50th anniversary, we'll find better and better ways to convey all of the complex information. And we thought it was a nice opportunity to have Glenn and Didier talk about what they've done at Trophime and what the other possibilities would be. So I want to thank both of them. And if you have questions, we have a few minutes for questions. And then I invite everybody to have a drink, and perhaps Didier at the cocktail hour can also show people on his iPad some of the other activities he's done with 3D imaging and modeling. Questions? I of course can't see because of that light, so maybe I will step over here where I can see if people have questions. Yes?
Just one question. I think I saw something, I visited Cluny and they had a similar thing there. And I don't know if this is actually happening, but is there a discussion of whether or not, instead of actually restoring something as much as it might need, you could just imagine what it should look like? And when people visit that, you'd show what it should look like.
Yeah, Cluny is a nice experience too. The difference between Cluny and Jumièges, for example, is that Cluny is on fixed spot. So there is a there is a fixed stuff, and then you can just turn a bit and see in augmented reality the abbey as it was before. I don't think that there is a discussion between restoring and showing what it was before. I mean, for Cluny, for example, or for Jumièges, it will be never done again. So this is not an issue, and this is not a question. So the only question is whether it's better to keep it like it is, or to show it with digital ways as it used to be. And that was exactly the question we had by the curator of Jumièges. Jumièges is a very romantic ruin. It's really nice, you know, to get there and to wander around, and you don't want to be too polluted with iPads, seriously. and she didn't want that. She said, okay, I want my site to be preserved from technology. And so we had to discuss with her, and then the mayor wanted it, so he got it. But but at the end of the day, I mean, she was deciding, so we had to convince her and to work with her to make something that is sensible, and where the technology is part of the visit, but is not overwhelming the visit. It's not present everywhere. So I think that these are new ways of presenting things, of showing things that you can't imagine. For example, for archaeological sites, it's easy. For ruins, it's easy. And it's really frustrating for the public when you go to Rome and that you don't understand anything about the forum, because even if you're a specialist. And I think that, well, I don't understand anything anyway. So I think it is a good way if it's done in a sensible way, if it's done with a scientific committee, to show if it's done, if the images are nice, if it's not, you know, marketing, if it's still historical, then it works. Whatever the technology, I would say.
Thank you, because I did feel at Cluny it was very intrusive because it was in place.
Yeah.
In Hansel.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
sitting there, you're thinking, but I want my romantic ruin.
Yeah, you're right. But you know, Cluny was done about 10 years ago, and mobile didn't exist. I mean, iPad arrived 4 years ago. So it didn't exist. It was really, well, we didn't do it, so our competitor did it, so we can say that it's pretty good. It's pretty good. But now it's a bit old, but you know, that was a huge project, because Cluny was a huge abbey. It was one of the biggest abbey in France, I think. And so it was a huge, and it is still a huge project. There is a 3D movie too, so it's still going on. And they have a mobile app which is not really good actually. No, and that's a pity. That's a pity because the site deserves it.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Are the Roman monuments of Arles being addressed in the same way?
From a conservation perspective?
Yes.
Yes. Well, I can't speak to the level of scientific testing that's being done there, but they are. I'm trying to think. The forum was restored, and
Who's doing that work is part of my
The
question.
French government.
the French government. Yeah.
Yes,
French
there's a
government,
very
the city of
large-
Arles.
There's a very large citywide plan for restoration
Right.
in Arles, and our project is one component of it. This one had more complexity because the Roman ruins are actually much more straightforward.
Yeah.
And also, because the cloister is still part of a working church, there also had to be other considerations about circulation and access. So this project was a little bit on the side from the main citywide project, because in fact the other citywide project was a little more straightforward. But it's ongoing, and they've actually produced several publications about the Roman part of the city and its conservation.
Yeah. And it's different also in that they're using them. Like the forum now is not just the site that you can go and visit and sort of get the sense of what the Roman site was like, but today they have I think there's film exhibitions there during I think the springtime. Arles has these large festivals, and the Coliseum, they're using it as an outdoor theater, and the Coliseum is where they have bullfights, and so a little bit different.
Yes.
Are there other examples of this type of technology where the user experience at a site is quite different? I know that's kind of a weird question to ask, but where it's been applied in a very different way as opposed to holding an iPad.
Do you mean, is there any other experiences?
Yes, I'm just. Have other people come up with different ways? For the user to.
Technology now is going very fast, so you can find virtual tours of monuments, 360 degrees tours of monuments. Augmented reality in France, there are about 3 or 5 sites, not more, and because it's quite, it is expensive. I wouldn't say that, but it's still cutting edge. So it's not so easy to convince the curators about and the scientists either to get rid of their information. I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of curators here, but I mean, information is power, and to give the information to the general public without knowing exactly what happened before, it's taking a risk, and some of them do, some of them don't. Same for scientific committees. I mean, if you have people who don't get on together, I mean, the scientific committee is not efficient. And we had that in Jumièges, for example. I mean, there are some hypotheses of restitution. They are not as it was before, because we have no idea about as it was before. But then this is the treatment of the image that is important. So this is not so common, but I think that it will come. And on websites too. I mean, you have virtual tour on websites, you have web shares on websites, you have augmented reality on websites. This is something I can't show you now, but I can show you later because you need a webcam. But you can do, really astonishing things with technology. So I think it will go wider and wider, but it will take time. I don't know if I answered the question.
No,
Yeah.
There was a question here about the future of WMF's project work at St. Trophime and what's on the agenda coming up.
Right now, the actual conservation piece is being implemented by a French team. The scientific committee met in February or March on site. I don't know, Glenn, do you want to say anything about what the rest of 2013 looks like for the project?
In terms of the implementation, the architect believes that maybe there's another year and a half or 2 worth of work on the site, and then implementation will be complete. As far as WMF's work, I think the role that we as a group are playing and all of the experts that are involved are there as issues turn up, and they're turning up all the time. And I think what Didier is showing here, what we leave behind in the software that we're leaving behind, that the city can use that as a tool, not only, as I was saying before, for maintenance of these sites, but also for web-based information that can be shared. So I think, unless you have any other plans in Arles.
Well, we're gonna do a publication at the end in French and in English. We have a series with Scala, and there've been a number of books in the series, and we hope in 2015 we'll have the Trophime book ready for distribution. So, which will be not so much an art historical view, but really a discussion of the conservation and research that was done as part of the WMF project. Yes?
You mentioned the flora, fauna, the fact that there were trees and plants or not in
Yes.
the cloister. And I wonder if there's been a sort of projection, because we're looking at the past, we're dreaming and saying that's what it was like, but we also have to dream about the future. Global warming, things are happening here in New York. You know, we're going to get mosquitoes that only live in Florida. So what will happen, let's take Trophime, if indeed we get very dry conditions, you know, you've been talking about water intrusion. What's the converse? Maybe desiccation, which will cause things to fall. Have you done any of that study, or was I getting a little too blue sky?
Study maybe a little too blue sky, but in reality, I think all of us think about that. I think one of the things that I've thought about and discussed with the architect there and others as well is that this project is extremely complicated from a technical point of view. People have been working on understanding the methods of decay on the sculpture there for a long time, and you know the gypsum crust provided some support or provided some safety from exposure to the environment. It wasn't until water started to get into and behind the crust that the crust started to become a real problem. So taking that crust off and exposing this calcium carbonate to an environment is a risky situation, and the column capitals have been treated and retreated numerous times. So some areas might be a little bit more easy to understand how they'll fare when they're exposed, and others may be a little bit more complicated. And everyone understands this. It's been a big experiment, taking calculated risks, and I think, you know, the cloister is architecturally something that could be covered. It could be, there could be a nice design for some sort of a top that actually puts everything inside where an environment can be controlled. So although nobody wants to do that, I think that's certainly a last resort. You know, I think maintenance and continuous reviewing in strategic locations in that cloister as time progresses is going to be critical to understanding how the work that was done holds up and what can be done about it. So it's not specifically about global warming, but it's certainly related to exposure of these objects to the environment and knowing how important thinking about that is.
Thank you. Well, I think I'm going to thank Glenn and Didier once again, and encourage everybody to talk to them with a refreshment, and invite everybody to enjoy the reception. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you.